All right, welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You know that website, most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. We cover it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where you can talk with other Pitt fans about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And we have our YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Click that subscribe button right down there, a little blue rectangle. It says subscribe. It's not hard to find, and that'll keep you up to date on everything we're doing here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have live streams like our weekly show that we do tonight at 8:30. We have post-game shows like we'll do after the Sun Bowl on Friday afternoon, early evening. That should be a fun one. And we're going to do some basketball post-game shows here as the season rolls on. We'll mix those in maybe once a week or so. And then we have this Morning Pitt video that we do every day, every weekday, Monday through Friday, right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and click subscribe, and that would be a whole lot cooler if you did. Getting closer and closer to the Sun Bowl on Friday, Pitt UCLA. It's kickoff noon local time, local in El Paso. That's Mountain Time Zone. By far one of the most overlooked and unremarkable time zones. Although, I mean, I shouldn't say it's unremarkable, but as far as time zones go, I mean, you got the Eastern Time Zone. You know, you got whatever, Central, I guess it's called. And that's a pretty unremarkable time zone as far as that goes. Pacific is Pacific, but, you know, Mountain, I guess I would say it's well named. It's a well named time zone because it feels like the whole thing is full of mountains. Either way, here on the East, we're going to be seeing this game kick off at 2 o'clock. But as we get closer to it, sort of more and more information and news and notes and details coming out. Yesterday, Pitt released the depth chart for the Sun Bowl. And we know these things are always kind of, how should we say, an unreliable narrator when it comes to what we'll actually expect to see in the game. But there's some interesting notes because some adjustments were made. Most notably, all the players who aren't on the team or opted out of the bowl, who are transferring or going to the NFL, whatever it is, they're no longer listed on the 2 deep. And so that's pretty notable. It further confirms the guys who are not going to play. Maybe gives us a sense of some guys who will play in this game. So kind of briefly running through the changes here, you know, Keaton Slovis is in the transfer portal. He's going to BYU. So Nick Patty listed as the starting quarterback. That's who we expected to start, and they make it official by listing him there. Running back Izzy Abanikanda going to the NFL. He's opting out of this game. Rodney Hammond listed as the starter. Again, what we would expect with Sibo Flemister and Vincent Davis behind him. Wide receiver, no real changes there aside from Jalen Bradley being removed from the depth chart in the wake of his decision to transfer. And that put Jake McConaughey on the 2 deep now. So, I mean, you've got your big three of Kanate Mumfield and Jared Wayne and Bub Means, but your backups are Gavin Thompson, a former walk-on who went on scholarship this year, Jake McConaughey, who is still a walk-on, and then Miles Alston, who's a redshirt freshman, played sparingly, particularly late in the season. Tight end, remove Kai Wright, who announced his intentions to transfer. Jake Renda now on there as the third tight end. Offensive line, you know, it's mostly what we saw at the end of the season. Gabe Hoy is no longer around. You know, he announced he's not going to play in this bowl game. He played in the Miami game, but he missed the Virginia game. And didn't even make that trip. So he was probably still nursing some injuries. But, I mean, you have, I think, what you would expect to be the starting lineup here, left to right. Branson Taylor, Marcus Minor, Jake Cradle or Owen Drexel. I'm guessing Cradle. Blake Zabovic at right guard, and then Matt Gonsalves at right tackle. Again, more or less what you saw. I mean, the most notable part is the tackles. And, I mean, you saw Gonsalves and Taylor and Hoy kind of rotate through there over the second half of the season, you know, particularly after Carter Warren was lost to an injury. It'd be interesting to see if Ryan Baer gets some playing time in this one. He should. He'll be able to preserve a red shirt and get some valuable snaps. It'll be interesting to see if they put him out there. On defense, of course, a couple defensive ends out of the mix, John Morgan and Deslin Alexandra. So you're looking at Haba Baldonado and Dayon Hayes as your starting ends, at least listed. What's more interesting is the additions of Sam Okunlola as a second reserve, a number 3 defensive end behind Baldonado. And Nakai Johnson is a number 3 defensive end behind Dayon Hayes. We haven't really seen Okunlola at all. I think he played in the Miami game. He was dealing with an injury through most of the season. But a high potential, high promise freshman, a guy that I think a lot of people at Pitt are excited about his potential for what he might be able to do over the course of his career. He might get some snaps here in this Sun Bowl, particularly when you're looking at, he's playing behind Chris Maloney, a redshirt senior who's been around for a while, but Okunlola has a lot of potential for the future. I think you could expect to see him. Defensive tackle, Kalijah Cansey obviously out of the mix, and so you're looking at David Green and Devin Danielson as your starters, or listed starters, with DeAndre Jules and Tyler Bentley behind them. Guys that we've pretty much seen all season, just taking Cansey out of the mix. He's a big one, but you remove him. Linebacker, you take Servassier Dennis out. He announced he's going to opt out of the bowl game. So Shane Simon moves from money linebacker to middle linebacker, at least on the depth chart. And he's listed as the starter now. Now, he played some snaps at middle linebacker throughout the season. But now he's actually listed as a starter with Brandon George behind him. George, who has only played, I think, in 3 games this year. So he'll be able to preserve a red shirt. And he should be able to healthy enough to get on the field on Friday in the Sun Bowl. So that's going to be a boost to the linebacking core. But moving those guys around, you end up with Kyle Lewis, a freshman on the depth chart, as the backup at star linebacker behind Bengali Kamara. Money linebacker, you still have Tyler Wiltz and Solomon DeShields, although Wiltz, I think, might have been an or starter with Kamara on the last few depth charts at the star linebacker spot. But ultimately, your main guys you're going to see the most are Simon, Kamara, Wiltz, and DeShields. George, I think, will rotate in at the middle linebacker spot. And hey, it'll be interesting to see what Kyle Lewis can do. He'll be number 38 in your program. So you might see the freshman out there. He dealt with injury for most of the season and didn't play at all. It'll be interesting to see if he gets some opportunities. And then in the secondary, no changes at corner. All the players who have been there all season are still here and still listed on the depth chart as they were. The only real change is at strong safety, the boundary safety spot. Brandon Hill announced he's going to the NFL. He's not playing in El Paso. So Javon McIntyre, who had a big game in that regular season finale at Miami, he's on the list now as the starting boundary safety ahead of Stephon Hall. And then Eric Hallett, he's going to go to the NFL, but he's going to play this game before he does. He's listed as the starting field safety with P.J. O'Brien behind him. So I don't think there are any surprises in this mix. It's interesting to see a few freshmen get elevated onto the list. Kyle Lewis, Sam Okunlola, Rylan Gandy, but he's been listed all year as a backup corner. Ryan Baer, but he's been listed for the past few weeks as a backup offensive tackle. I say get those guys in there. It'll be interesting to see them play a little bit. I'd like to see Kyle Lewis take a few snaps. I'd like to see Sam Okunlola take a few snaps, and Nakai Johnson, even though he's a redshirt freshman. And I'd be interested to see how these boundary safeties do, Javon McIntyre and Stephon Hall. Special teams, a couple of changes, nothing too shocking. Sam Scarton no longer on the list. Looks like he is transferring or hanging it up one way or the other. He's not going to be around, so he comes off the scholarship list for next season. Caleb Junko listed as the backup place kicker behind Ben Sauls. Sauls really took hold of that position this year. After working exclusively on kickoffs last year with Sam Scarton as the place kicker, field goals and extra points and whatnot, Ben Sauls really took that job. And I think did really, really well. I think he had a good season as a kicker for Pitt in 2022. And that spot, he's a redshirt sophomore now. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. And actually, as a redshirt sophomore, he technically could play 3 more years. Because that would mean that his freshman year was 2020. Which, the COVID year that gets you that extra year of eligibility if you want it. So in theory, they could have 3 more years of Ben Sauls, which I think would be a good thing for the kicking situation. At punter, still going with the 3-man list, Caleb Junko, Cam Guest, Sam Vanderhaar, all with oars in between them. I think Vanderhaar continues to be the future at that position. They just they might need another offseason to get him sort of settled in. And then with Izzy Abanikanda off the list, Rodney Hammond is now listed as one of the kickoff returners next to Vincent Davis. Jalen Barden no longer listed as a potential punt returner. You're looking at MJ Devonshire, Vincent Davis, Kanate Mumfield. No drastic changes. And again, I think as you look at this, you're basically seeing what you would expect to see. I think this is who you would expect to see in these spots on the depth chart. But seeing it on paper, sort of reflecting the guys who have left, it makes it a little more solidified. So you're really kind of getting a look at it there. Pitt, I think, being rather forthcoming about who's playing and who's not playing in the Sun Bowl. Not any more forthcoming than they have to be. I mean, all the guys who are not playing have announced it themselves, so it's not like Pitt is putting out a list. Pat Narduzzi has not all of a sudden become very transparent, but he is quite transparent by comparison to UCLA. UCLA, and I don't know if this is at the direction of Chip Kelly or not, but they've got everyone playing. Everyone on the team is available for the Sun Bowl in El Paso. Guys who are leaving for the NFL, guys who are transferring, they're all there. It's amazing. No other team in America has zero opt-outs the way that UCLA does. I mean, I have to assume no other team in America has zero opt-outs the way UCLA does. It's just, it's amazing. It really is. I think Chip Kelly might be even cagier than Pat Narduzzi. I think he might be even less interested in transparency than Pat Narduzzi. Well, I wanted to get some insight on UCLA. I wanted to get some insight on what to expect from the Bruins as we go into this Sun Bowl. And so I'm bringing in our friend. He's Tracy McDannald. He's a staff reporter, staff writer at BruinBlitz.com. That's the Rivals.com site that covers UCLA football, basketball, recruiting. They do with UCLA what we do with Pitt. And so I wanted to get Tracy in just to talk about who's actually going to play for UCLA in this game, plus take a look at the matchups and just get more information on the Bruins. Look, if you're like me, you probably haven't watched a ton of UCLA this year. Maybe a little, but not every game. And so Tracy can give us some more insight. So without further ado, here he is, staff writer for BruinBlitz.com, Tracy McDannald. And Tracy, thanks so much for joining us. Really excited to get the view from the other side of the country of this Sun Bowl, Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Got to get the sponsor in there. It's not the Brute Sun Bowl. It's not the. It was the Brute Sun Bowl when Pitt played there in 2008. I forget what it was in 2018. I should know this off the top of my head, but it's the Sun Bowl. It's Pitt UCLA, and I want to talk a lot about this game. I actually wanted to ask you something else before we start, just because in the last 9 months, Pitt and Pitt fans have developed a healthy hatred for USC and Lincoln Riley, specifically out of the Jordan Addison transfer situation. So I'm curious. I mean, that's a rivalry school, right? I mean, is there even more dislike of USC now that Lincoln Riley's there, or is it just sort of the same hatred for UCLA fans that's always been there?
I mean, the hatred's there just because they are the name and the colors and all that, but it does add a little bit of spice to it. I think anytime you've got a rivalry where both teams are actually good again, compared to some of the down years in the past, it always adds a little bit of something. But no, as far as the fans go, any year, as long as the colors are the same and the name of the teams are the same, then yeah, the hate's always going to be there.
So Lincoln Riley and all of his antics and whatnot has not upped the ante at all. It's just always it's the same as it always was.
Yeah, it's about all the same. I mean, like I said, it's just you're playing for a little bit more at the end of the year, especially the way both teams played this year.
Yeah. Well, future Big Ten rivalry, right? Future Big Ten.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to it. But all right, so this 2022 season for UCLA, I mean, obviously 9-3. I think top 20 team right now. Hot start, 6-0, up to the top 10. I mean, I don't need to recount it for you. Sort of for the Pitt fans, 8-1. Number 12, floating around there. 2 out of the 3, final games ended up as losses. What's the overall view of UCLA's season among the fan base? How are fans sort of reacting to the season the Bruins had?
I think positively. I mean, the non-conference being what it was, as soft as it was, this record doesn't surprise people. It's pretty much about what you expected. Obviously, they would have loved to beat USC and add that cherry on top of the season. But as far as expectations and all that coming into the season, if anything, it solidified Chip Kelly's spot in the fan base, because it was rocky coming in. Everyone was wondering why they gave him a contract extension because of his record for most of his tenure up until last year. So I think this year kind of got people off his back, and like you're saying, 9 wins, trying to tie a school record and all that. It's about all that they realistically could have asked for at the beginning of the year.
I was kind of curious if, losing 2 out of the last 3, like we said, with the Arizona and USC games, if that sort of left a bad taste in fans' mouth. But then I was also curious if getting Dante Moore to flip on signing day kind of overcomes a little bit of that. You know what I mean? If you can get a 5-star quarterback, even if you feel a little sore about losing 2 out of the last 3 and thinking about what might have been, that maybe it, I mean, does it get overshadowed a little bit by a recruiting success like that?
Yeah, you actually brought up a good point because, again, a lot of people a little bit down after that USC loss and all that. But then the other criticism of Chip Kelly has been, what he's done on the recruiting trail. This is, Dante Moore being his first 5-star addition since he took the job in 2018. So that definitely, warmed people up to the idea of Chip Kelly as a head coach going forward into the Big Ten, and wondering what he can do. And he's obviously had some success with the transfer portal for as far as the team this year, and some of the additions that he's already made for 2023. So things are definitely looking a lot better for Chip Kelly specifically, beyond this season.
Is the USC game the one that got away? Is that the one that the fans look at and say, "Ah, geez, I can't believe we lost"? I mean, there were only 3 losses to choose from, but is that the one that sort of stung the most?
I think just from the rivalry standpoint, it stings a little bit more. But I think the one that most people will tell you that really stung was the Arizona game.
Mm.
That was the game where they should have won. It's just one of those inexplicable, Pac-12 cannibalizing itself for no reason type of games. And it's funny because you look at 2 of those 3 losses, they're 2 plays away from being in the Pac-12 title game, right? So it is, that's probably the one that sticks out more than any, where you're just like, all right, they had no business losing that game, and they probably should already be at 10 wins going for an 11th right now. But again, overall, I think had you told people you're gonna go for a 10th win going into your bowl game, I think most people would have taken that at the beginning of the year.
Sure. Of course, some of the big questions around this game are opt outs, and it's becoming bigger questions every year. There's more. Pitt's already got, they've got their starting quarterback out, their lead running back out. They've got this guy out, that guy out, and yet USC, or excuse me, the UCLA fans are going to kill me here. I'm sorry. It starts with UCLA. I haven't really seen anything. There's some guys who have announced for the NFL, right, that they're going to go to but even those announcements, I was just kind of glancing over. They don't make any mention of the Sun Bowl. Are we to assume that just everybody on the roster is playing in this game? No one's skipping this for UCLA?
See, the funny thing is, even all the people who announced their intention to transfer or declare for the NFL, they all made the trip. So they're all in El Paso, as far as I know. Casmer Allen, they put up a photo right before their team flight. He was in one of the photos, so he's confirmed to be there. Even their long snapper, which I'd never seen a long snapper make an announcement for the NFL. He's not going to use his bonus year of eligibility, but hey, he's there. Their kicker, Nicholas Barmira, who's in the transfer portal, he's been practicing the whole time. So as far as the lead up to the game, it's business as usual for UCLA. Now, whether that actually translates and how much playing time the starters that do play actually get, that remains to be seen. So, but obviously the big questions going in will be Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Zach Charbonnet. Won't they play? And if they do play, for how long?
Well, okay, that you just took my next question. So what I mean, what is it? We've seen nothing. I mean, we saw, you and I were talking before we started. DTR has talked once this month, and he said he had to talk to advisors and family, which to me says they're all going to advise you not to play. Charbonnet hasn't talked at all. You said he's missed a couple of games this season. I mean, we know that there's no information coming out of Chip Kelly. What do you expect to see on Friday afternoon?
With Dorian, I think he's going to play regardless. It's just maybe it's for a half or something like that before he gets pulled. He did have a game earlier this year. I want to say it was maybe South Alabama, where he played the first half, took a big hit, then they pulled him from the rest of the game. So I could envision something like that, and it also give UCLA a chance to look at Ethan Garbers and the future of what is a interesting quarterback battle going into 2023. Charbonnet, I'm less confident in, just because, like I said, 2 games missed already this year, both similar situations. To the point where he's practiced throughout a week, and he's in the case of the other 2 games, he talked to the media before the games, the week leading up to it, and even as he went through warmups and all that, right up till kickoff. He still missed the game unannounced. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a similar situation where, you know, cameras are on him and, you know, he's taking steps right up to right up to kickoff. And next thing you know, he's on the sideline with his helmet on, but just never steps on the field. A lot of it's, you know, NFL future driven. He's the one with the biggest draft stock. The thing that I think, if for whatever reason, if both Dorian and Zach do play, the motivating factor would be the fact that they have not, at least in the UCLA uniform, in Charbonnet's case, they have not played in a bowl game. You know, UCLA hasn't played in a bowl game since 2017. They declined in 2020. They had to pull out last minute 2021 because of a COVID outbreak on the team. That was hours before kickoff and one of the wilder cancellations of that crazy year. So I think if there's a motivating factor to play at least a little bit, it would be that. And the thing is, leading up to this game, everyone we've talked to on the UCLA side, they do bring up the fact that there is a chance to, one, play in a bowl game, and two, match the school record for wins. So there is some motivation there that maybe other teams around the country maybe don't have.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's such a feeling that, oh, bowl games don't matter. You know what I mean? That anybody in their position, just like we're seeing with Pitt's roster, anybody who's in that position is just, oh, it's almost automatic is what it feels like anymore, and it's sort of happened quickly. It'd be interesting to see a couple of guys of that prominence go the other direction and say, no, this does still matter to us. We do still want to get this win. It would be a change from what we're seeing a lot around the country. As far as this matchup, I think obviously there's the strength versus strength of UCLA's rush offense and Pitt's rush defense, you know, two of the best in the country, quite frankly, at what they do. But I'm curious about the other side. Tell me about UCLA's defense. Like what kind of system and structure are they using? What are their strengths, and where have they been beaten in games where the defense has been beat a little bit?
As far as UCLA's defense, um, it's one of those bend don't break type of things with them, especially first half of the year. Everyone knew that there were holes coming in. They were plugged a lot of those holes through the transfer portal. But still in the secondary, there were a lot of questions, particularly at corner. There's a lot of youth there. And from that Oregon game on, that first loss, teams really saw that as a blueprint and, you know, started attacking them. Even when they beat Arizona State, it was particularly close because one thing that UCLA struggled with in the second half of the year is tackling in space. That's where, you know, they probably got in the most trouble. And you know, and when they're not doing, you know, when teams aren't doing that, it's just been, you know, straight up attacking their corners and daring them to make a stop. And I think you saw that a lot with Arizona and USC. Teams were going for it on, you know, fourth downs. You know, if it's a fourth and short situation, even if it's within like 2-3 yards, you know, teams have pretty much said, all right, let's see if you can actually stop us. And for the most part, UCLA hasn't been able to. So that's the biggest weakness coming in. But as far as the strength, it's kind of weird because you think with, you know, a porous pass defense, you think, okay, maybe they're not getting to the quarterback yet. You know, their pass rush is their strength. When they're getting to a quarterback and biding some time for those corners, that's where they're playing their best. And you just look at a host of guys. Leatu Latu, he's a transfer from Washington, made a really big impact this year. Comeback player of the year, was medically retired, I believe, 20 months ago from his time in Washington. So he's been, you know, an incredible story for them. They've got a pair of twin edge rushers from North Texas, Grayson and Gabriel Murphy. So those are probably their biggest strengths, just as far as the pressure they can put on the quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see with two quarterbacks they've only seen really on film, and even then just a little bit with Pitt's situation. It'll be interesting to see how this pass defense looks up against Pitt.
Right. I guess, and then on the other side, as far as UCLA's offense goes, if you know Zach Charbonnet does just stand on the sideline with a helmet on, how does that change their? I mean, do you expect them to still run as much as they did before, and who would be the guys they would look to, you know, to put out there?
So they're actually pretty fortunate in the fact that he has missed 2 games this year. They have had a look at, you know, what a plan without Zach would look like. And ironically enough, against Arizona State, they produced their most rushing yards. They ran for more than 400 against them on the road. So it's definitely a deep group of running backs. I think the big one that you're probably going to see at some point in the game, if he doesn't just take over the bulk of the carries, freshman TJ Harden. He ran for, I believe, a career high 89 against Cal in the regular season finale. He's really shown some flashes as that next heir apparent to Charbonnet going forward. And then they've got a bunch of guys. Keegan Jones has been their primary backup. He's had a couple big runs this year. Colson Yankoff is a converted quarterback who gives them a bigger, almost like a fullback type of look. So you'll probably expect to see him for a couple snaps. They like to do some things with their receivers. If Casimir Allen doesn't play, since he's one of the players who opted the NFL, it takes a little bit out of the offense just because he's someone who was a former running back that they've used, whether it be jet sweep type of thing or just direct snap. So that may take a little bit out of their rushing attack, but I think with UCLA, you're going to see a comfortable team, even if Charbonnet doesn't play, just because they've done this before and they're pretty confident in a group of 3, possibly 4 different guys right behind them.
Sure. All right. Well, Tracy, the last thing, have you started scouting out hotels in Madison and State College, Ann Arbor, and East Lansing, and all these exotic locales that you're going to be spending time in over the next few years?
Oh God, it's really weird. Just saying the words UCLA, USC to the Big Ten and trying to let that sink in for the last several months has been really weird. And then of course they had the whole issue with the UC Regents, just because UCLA being a public school, they had to actually formally make a vote up until, I believe it was a couple of weeks ago this month, to officially approve the move. But yeah, no, it's just really really weird knowing that you're just not going to be calling UCLA a Pac-12 team anymore, and you're just going to have to get used to these new matchups.
Yeah.
And for them, it'll be colder weather matchups when they are on the road. You're talking about November, December, so it'll be really, really interesting.
Significant time changes and Rutgers, and you
Yeah,
gotta. Hey, like Atlantic City is only like 2 hours from Piscataway, so I mean that's the best thing I can say about Rutgers. And New York City is only a little bit further than, probably maybe even a little bit closer than that. There's just land grant universities. They're in the Midwest. They're a special kind of animal, but I'm sure you'll find that out. My favorite story always is the Pitt played at Iowa in 2012 or 11, I want to say. And I picked up my rental car and I went to drop it off at, I forget where it was, probably the Cedar Rapids Airport. And I parked my rental car in the parking spot right next to a fence, and on the other side of the fence was the plane I was going to get on. Like it was right there, and I was like, Cedar Rapids, man, you walk in like the through security and you can look at the gate because the gate's about 10 feet away. So it's
that's
convenient.
incredible.
It's easy. But all right, Tracy, well, thanks so much. I really appreciate the insight. Hope you have a good time when you start going to the Midwest. It's a lot of fun out here. And maybe Pitt and UCLA will cross paths again. Who knows? Maybe in a few years they'll all be in one conference, and then we'll have every 4 years Pitt and UCLA will match up. But thanks again. I appreciate it, and enjoy the game on Friday.
Yep, thanks for the time.
Thanks to Tracy McDannald from BruinBlitz.com for joining us here on the Morning Pitt on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. A lot of insight, a lot of good insight, a lot of interesting insight. I hope he's looking forward to those wonderful weekends in Piscataway. It really is. I'm actually not going to even pretend to say anything nice about Piscataway. I don't hate Piscataway. I didn't hate the trips to Rutgers that I made when Pitt was in the Big East going against, playing Rutgers. But I mean, come on, man. Like, you used to go to Eugene, you used to go to Tempe, and now you're going to Piscataway. Now you're going to State College. Now you're going to Madison. And look, those are cool game day experiences. I clown on Iowa a little bit. I make jokes about the airport and all of that, but like, the reality is it was a great game day experience watching a game there. It was a great game day experience. Penn State, I mean, to be honest, I was a little unimpressed with Penn State. I expected it to be more than it was. It was still a really good atmosphere, but it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be for the size and the attendance and all of that. And maybe it was just the sense in the press box, but I mean, I've seen more. I've seen better, I guess I would say. I've seen better. But that's not what this is about at all. It was great insight, though, for a look at UCLA in that conversation with Tracy McDannald. So thanks to Tracy for joining us. It would not be a surprise at all, as you heard him say, and I agree with him. If Zach Charbonnet goes through warmups, has his full uniform on, and keeps it on as he stands on the sideline for the entire game on Friday, it would defy all logic and all sense of what we know to be true in 2022 if he were to come out and actually play in this game. It really would. I mean, Dorian Thompson-Robinson too, but Charbonnet especially. I just can't see it. I can't believe that he'll actually play in this game. I guess we'll find out on Friday. We're just a few days away from it. Listen, tonight, 8:30 p.m., we'll be live right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com for the weekly Panther-Lair show. We'll talk for about an hour. We'll get your comments and questions. We have a chat screen that goes right there along the right-hand side of the screen. We'll talk to you. You can post your comments and questions. We'll read them. We'll answer them. We'll have a conversation about it. We'll talk about this Pitt UCLA Sun Bowl. We'll talk about recruiting. We'll talk about basketball. We'll talk about everything right here on the Panther-Lair show tonight at 8:30 p.m. So make sure you tune in for that. If you're worried that you're going to miss it, click the subscribe button, turn on notifications. You'll get an alert sent to your phone so you never miss anything we do right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. While you're here, make sure you like this video, click the subscribe button, do those things. I appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you watching the video as always. Flying through the week. Before we know it, it's going to be Sun Bowl Friday, New Year's Eve Saturday, New Year's Day Sunday, and then we're just back to the grind. And we start counting down to the end of the year again. It's all coming to a head here. And so we'll be talking about it on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks again for tuning in. Hope you've had a great week so far. Hope you have a good Wednesday. And we'll be back tonight for the live show at 8:30 and then with another Morning Pitt tomorrow morning right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.